All right, let's talk through the logical components of Active Directory. And you're going to hear these terms over and over again. So I'm going to walk you through them briefly, and then you'll hear them as we go through the course. And it's just good to have that familiarity with the names and kind of what they mean behind it. So up first is what is called the Active Directory schema. And you can think of a schema as a rule book or a blueprint. Basically what it does is it contains definitions of every object that can be created in Active Directory. So you see here, it just says it enforces rules regarding object creation and configuration. That's it. When you hear the schema, all you got to think about is the rule book. You don't have to think too much more complex about that. It just enforces rules about object creation. More importantly is what are called domains. So domains are what is used to group things together. So we can group our objects together in a single organization. And you can see here that we've got a single domain, this contoso.com, which is all these sources are provided by Microsoft Virtual Academy. And it's just one domain. And if you have like a small business, think of a small business, you might just have one domain that you're on. And this one domain has all the users, computers, every object inside of it, because all you need is one domain. So we have this one domain and it functions like a domain controller. And we could see down here in the descriptions that there are administrative boundaries for applying policies, and they are authentication, authorization. And this looks very familiar to what a domain controller was, except now we're just managing it all in what is called a domain. So when you see like a .com or .org, you think of that as a domain. Not very different when we are building it out in our network. We also have what are called trees. Now, trees are a group of domains, and they're kind of in this hierarchy. So you see, again, we have this example of this contoso.com. Well, what if contoso.com is the big namesake, and then we have two child domains? So we've got a parent domain, and then we have a child domain or two child domains. And we have a division in North America, so we've got na.contoso.com, and then we have a European, so we have emea.contoso.com. So when we have trees, we have this parent, and then we've got these children when it comes to domain. And they have what is called a trust with them that is two-way transitive. And we'll talk about trust here in just a little bit. But just know that you have the parent, and then you have the children, and they share namespace, and they share some trust between them. And then we have what is called a forest. Now, forests are just a collection of these trees. So if we have one tree, and it's maybe Contoso, and then you have another tree, and maybe it's a different business name, but they link together one way or another. And you can have different sort of trusts between these forests. So we'll take a look at that again in just a second, but just know that these build up and they stack as they get bigger. And logically, we start with the domain, and then we have a tree, and then we have a forest, okay? And for the sake of this class, or for the sake of this course, we're only going to be working with a domain. And a lot of times when you see even more advanced Active Directory courses, mostly you're going to be working with trees where you have these children domains, and you might try to escalate into a parent domain. Hardly ever do you see forests, but it's still important to know about them. Now, inside of Active Directory, there are what is called organizational units, and you'll hear me refer to them as OUs. That's the common terminology is an OU for these. And these are just containers, and they are containers for your users, your computers, your groups. And you're going to see this once we start building out our Active Directory components. You're going to see me go in, and we're going to set up some different OUs and have our users in one OU, we'll have our groups in their own OU, etc. So you'll see what they are, but as of right now, just think of OUs as organizational units. Okay, and then we have trusts. Now, trusts are how we have access between resources. Now, you can see that there is directional trust and transitive trust. So if we have directional trust, we have to have trust from one domain to the other domain. Okay, so it flows from a trusting domain to a trusting domain. Now, if we have transitive trust, then we have a trusting domain and a trusting domain, but it also trusts everything that that domain trusts. So if there's other trees or if it's in a forest, then it trusts everything that trickles down. And you can see in the image here where we have two trusts, but then it's trusting everything that other domains are trusting as well. So a trust is just a way for users to have access to certain resources that might exist in another domain. And lastly, we have objects. So objects are what's going to be inside of our OUs, our organizational units. We're going to have these different objects. So a user can be an object, a group can be an object, a computer, printer, shared folders. You see all these things in this list, they can be objects. So let's break this all down one more time. So we have domains, and domains are used to group and manage objects in an organization. That's primarily what we're going to be working with in this course. If you have multiple domains, we have what's called the tree. You might have a parent domain, and then you might have the children domain. And then when you have multiple sets of trees, you're starting to build out a forest. Okay? Now inside of these domains or these trees, these forests, are what's called these OUs, these organizational units. And these organizational units consist of these objects. All right. And then the last thing to remember is across forests or across domains, we have what are called trusts. And these trusts can be directional, meaning that one domain trusts another domain, or they can be transitive, meaning one domain trusts another domain and then trusts everything else that that domain also trusts. Okay, so high level overview. Take good notes on this if you need to go back and watch it one more time, but you're going to see this over and over and over, especially domains and organizational units and objects. We'll talk about trusts again throughout the course, and we'll give some ideas about trees later on in the course as well, though we won't actually be exploiting them. So for this course, big takeaways are domains, organizational units, and objects, and remember what trusts are as well, but it does not hurt to know all these things just to boost your Active Directory knowledge, especially for an interview if it comes up. So that is it. Now we're going to be moving on into our lab building, and this is where the fun really begins. We're done with the death by PowerPoint. So I'll catch you over in the next video where we start to build out our Active Directory lab.